I awoke in the same pile of garbage bags the next morning, to the old-timer poking me with the handle of a broom. My eyes slowly opened and my ears quickly caught on to the man's words. "Get out of here, you no-good bum!" he shouted angrily with veins popping out of his red neck. "My alley isn't your hotel! I'll call the police!" I was heavily confused as to why the bartender from the night before was acting such a way, but nevertheless, I had to be rid of him. Despite how tired I was, I reached up and grabbed the wooden handle of the old-timer's straw broom. I was rather quick about ripping it from his grasp, and as I stood up, he took a couple steps back. "What's wrong with you?" I growled, raising my newfound weapon over my head. "I wouldn't beat you with this thing while you were sleeping. Why would you do it to me?" "Please!" The old bartender cowered backwards as I took a few steps towards him. "I don't want any trouble." "Don't want any trouble?" I asked loudly enough to make him jump. "Last night you were serving me drinks, and then this morning you're hitting me with a broom. You don't expect me to fight back?" "A lot of homeless crash outside the pub in the middle of the night," the old-timer explained. "They wait for me to close down shop and then break into my place early in the morning, taking a lot of booze and causing damage in the process." "I'm not homeless," I barked at the old-timer. "Malarkey," he spat back, showing some courage. "You were in the bar last night telling that hero enthusiast that you didn't know where your home was. If that doesn't define being homeless, then I'm a senile old man." "I don't need a home," I growled in his face, and his back hit the wall as he tried to escape me. "Please don't kill me," the old-timer whimpered as he slid into a sitting position against the front wall of his own bar. "Please." As I studied the frightened old man in his shaking, outstretched arms, I realized this was nothing personal nor intentional. This was simply an anxious, terrified old man protecting his business from a potential threat. Well, what I had failed to see before now was that I was the threat. Here I was, a fiery mess holding a broomstick over my head, like I was going to bash the old-timer's skull in with it. My unfriendly attitude the night before probably didn't help my case in fitting the scary profile. I could see it in his eyes, the fear. The same fear I had in mind the night my father had gutted my mother. Had his demonic rage been genetically passed on to me? I blinked several times and rubbed my eyes as I regained my composure. I'm sorry," I told the old-timer, but he only yelped, shaking his head. "Just get out of my alley," he replied in a scared, cowardly tone. "Leave and never come back here." I sighed, giving him a nod. I snapped the broom in half over my knee and turned away, slowly making my way out of the alley. It was imperative that I continued my search for the general. I had wasted enough time the night before, drowning myself in a despicable amount of alcohol. It was hard to believe that I'd let myself go like that, but a part of me deep down knew that after 50 years of being completely shut out from the physical world, well, you get where I'm going with that. I couldn't keep my thoughts from racing as I shadowed the streets of Chicago, carefully yet frantically searching for my target. Everything seemed to be either a dead end or a lie, leading me to believe that this general was a ghost, even here on planet Earth. How could a man be so hard to find? I'd wasted nearly the entire day hopelessly looking for him, only to find nothing and meet resistance from anyone I inquired. Everyone I came across had the same attitude as the old-timer, only the younger citizens had a nastier edge to their responses. They gave me dirty looks, and I was lucky enough if they left it at that and ignored me. Most would reply with telling me to get lost or that I should take my bummish stench somewhere else. To think that because of my appearance, people would treat me so terribly, as if my existence was a disgusting burden to society. Well, I wasn't anything of the sort. In fact, I was here trying to stop a terrible man from hurting countless people. Alas, the world still had much to learn about the presence of the supernatural. I could never figure out if I had been lucky or cursed to being enlightened to such things, especially at a young age. Then again, I wasn't exactly here because I cared about this world. I had long since lost all attachments to these mortal people in their hollow human shells. I was truly here to restore peace to the souls the general had taken. They were my only family now, taken from the only realm I considered home. I had just turned down an alleyway when I noticed two voices in the darkness, one of them raspy and demanding while the other was soft, fragile, desperately scared. I stepped forward slowly as I listened to their conversation. "Hand it over now!" the raspy, stern voice demanded. "I ain't got all night, lady." "Please, no," the other voice, obviously a woman, whimpered. "It's all I have, and it isn't for me." "You think I frickin' care?" the man shrieked, and I sneaked even closer as I could see he was holding a gun to her head. "I'll kill you without a second thought, and mug the next woman that thinks this alley is a good shortcut home. You follow me, lady?" "You can have anything else you want," the woman frantically tried to reason with him. "I don't have any money, but—" "Shut up!" the man barked, waving the barrel of the gun. "Just give me the watch." I was only 10 to 15 feet away from them when the woman shook her head. Despite how close I was, the sun was setting, and the tall buildings on both sides covered the alley in darkness. "What was that?" the mugger snarled and cocked his gun, resting the barrel against her temple. I couldn't quite make that out in the dark. Teary-eyed, the woman yet again shook her head and put a shiny pocket watch in her purse that she had been holding behind her back. "You can't have it," she told the man one final time. "It isn't mine to give you." The man was silent for only a short moment before exploding with frustration and anger. "You're real stupid, you know that?" he lectured her, using his gun to push her head into the wall behind her. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted the watch, or some money. You could have just given it to me and I'd already be on my way. But now?" he snarled, smacking the woman hard in the face. "I'll have to make do on my word, won't I?" "Please!" the woman begged once more as she fell to her knees. "Don't! Shut your damn mouth!" I couldn't let the man murder this woman, and for a moment I saw my parents in their place and I lost it, charging forward. Of course, the noise I caused immediately alerted both of them to my presence, but none of that mattered. I had been close enough that within 2 seconds I was upon the mugger, quickly smacking the gun from his hand. "What the?" the man grunted as he tried to reach for the gun only 3 feet away on the ground. The only bad part of his plan was taking his eyes off of me, especially in the little bit of light we had. With a single kick, I smashed my toe into his face and he collapsed to his knees, gurgling as blood flooded both his sinus and his throat. The woman was so surprised and distraught that she remained where she was, burying her head between her legs as she whimpered. I reached over the bleeding man and picked up the pistol he had dropped, pointing it to the back of his head. "Scram," I told him sternly, "and don't ever let me catch you doing this again." "Who are you?" the mugger asked, and I gave him a disgusted look. "Who am I?" I repeated calmly before striking him across his already broken face with the gun. "Just get out of here before you wish I hadn't answered that question." The man nodded as he quickly got up and ran away, turning left as soon as he exited the alley. I stashed the gun away in the inside pocket of my brown jacket and turned to face the woman. She was no longer afraid. In fact, she was standing up and brushing herself off before giving me a skeptical smile. "I'm not going to hurt you," I assured her in a soft tone, turning my back to her. "Make it home safe. You can't leave," she suddenly said, grabbing my shoulder with her small hand. "Not yet." I turned my head over my shoulder, and in the darkness I caught her green eyes. "Why's that?" I asked her. "My name is Cassie," she told me. "And yours?" I slightly pulled away from her and shrugged. "I guess you can call me Daniel." "Thank you, Daniel," she spoke with a grateful attitude. "I would be dead right now if it wasn't for you. He wanted the pocket watch, but it's for my brother in Seattle." "Don't mention it," I answered, yet again attempting to make my departure. "Are you going home?" I was silent for a moment before shaking my head. "No," I told her. "I don't have one, at least not here in Chicago." "You must be hungry," the young woman said with a frown, reaching out her hand. Come with me and I'll take care of you for the night. It's the least I could do after you saved my life. Come on, it's only a couple blocks away. I could tell by the look on her face that she wasn't going to take no for an answer. She probably had 3/4 of a mind to drag me by my ear if I tried to decline. It was the same expression I used to see on my mother's face. All right, I said simply with a nod. Lead the way. She smiled again and pointed behind me. You can lead me out of this alley, tough guy. I frowned, turning to lead the way. Just try it, Cassie urged me several hours later as we stood in her small kitchen. Her apartment wasn't too impressive. In fact, it was quite the opposite, although it did appear to be cozy. It looks like hot, muddy water. I grimaced at the steaming mug as she was trying to hand it to me. It's coffee, she half barked, half laughed at me. Just take one drink. I sighed, taking the drink from her hand. I tried a quick sniff and then took a small taste. My eyes widened as Cassie anxiously awaited my verdict. I took a second and then a third drink, each one a little bigger than the last. Do you like it? She threw the question out eagerly. I must say you were right, I chirped, taking another drink. This coffee is delicious. Cassie couldn't help but chuckle. Well, I'm in complete disbelief that you've never tried it before. Where in the world did you come from? Under a rock? If only, I muttered, immediately regretting it. I could feel the awkwardness set in as my eyes nailed themselves into the vinyl floor. The moments passed as she made a cup of coffee for herself, taking the first hot sip as I looked back up. So, how old are you? I asked her, hoping to ease the mood. I'm 29, she answered, sipping from her mug. And you? I shrugged. 30. Cassie gave me an odd look. What's with the shrug? Not sure how old you are, huh? The both of us laughed a little and then she smiled. Get some sleep, she told me. I know I'm going to. If you can't sleep, the radio is available, but only at a low volume. I don't get much, so you'll be stuck with the late night news. That's fine, I smiled back, the first time I had genuinely done so. Okay, well the couch in the living room should be comfy enough for you, she said, handing me what was left of her mug. Finish that for me, will you? Of course, I said, giving her a small grin. Well, good night then, Daniel, Cassie said, returning the smile. Then she kissed me on the cheek, a gesture that I wasn't expecting. Good night, Cassie, I replied in a rather surprised tone. As she left the kitchen, I remained where I stood until I heard her bedroom door shut. That's when I made my way to the living room and plopped down on the long sofa. The radio was on the nightstand, just an arm's reach away, so naturally I turned it on. Of course she'd been right, and the voice on the radio was discussing current events. I yawned, grabbing the nearest pillow and blanket as I prepared to relax. Listening to the radio until I passed out seemed like an appealing idea. I gathered that the man speaking was a talk show host of sorts, but that he was discussing with another man threw me off. Tell me, Dr. Thetis, the radio host spoke. There have been quite a few debuts of mass crime fighters in recent years. What are your thoughts? I gather that both the American spirit and the human condition are at odds, Fillmore. A deep voice that I assumed was Dr. Thetis replied. That's interesting, the radio show host known as Fillmore chirped. Care to elaborate on that? Well, it all has deep roots in our country's conflicts, involving numerous wars, including the Civil War, Dr. Thetis said. You're speaking, of course, of Father Spirit? Indeed, Dr. Thetis murmured. He is the original superhero, after all, a man that dates back at least 100 years or more. Our research hit dead ends, but I know he's older than anyone else on the planet, having participated in numerous international problems. The man never actually became a superhero until after the Civil War, when his partner went rogue on an entire city by himself. Father Spirit's influence in both this nation's history and the hearts of thousands he saved continue to shape our lives every day. You do realize this, yes? Well, I'm not actually supposed to state my opinion on the air. You want to know what the old dying doctor knows, is that correct? Thetis asked the radio host, who was silent for a moment after being interrupted. Tell me your thoughts on Captain Cosmos, Doctor. Fillmore fired back, and I did my best to keep myself awake so that I could hear their conversation. They say his powers come from the stars themselves, like an ocean of cosmic batteries. Whether or not this is true, we do know for a fact that his mentor is Father Spirit, a man who indeed knows what he is doing. My point is, there was no more fighting it. I was feeling drowsy, and it wasn't long before my eyes closed as a natural and more sober sleep came over me. And I was gone. The time I spent in the other realm was agonizingly slow at first. Just my conscience, eventually drifting along like the moaning spirits. I was but a lost child trapped in the eternal void of empty loneliness. Nothing about my existence held any meaning, and it would remain that way. The darkness continued far beyond anything I ever reached in my half-century exploring. What did interest me was that over the course of those 56 years, I had realized this realm could be manipulated. I wasn't sure if the spirits could do that as well, but if so, then they never did. While they mindlessly wandered the realm like millions of drones, I soon had to splinter away from them. It all began about 5 years after my arrival, when I realized that I could recreate my body. As I once again became a physical being, I felt a little less alone. Sure, there was still no company, but now I was a body and soul, not just a maddening mind. Time had no effect on me here, so I could not age, something I could not tell between a gift or a curse. But when I had spent a decade here, I made another discovery. The souls would wander on in a pattern, as if set by nature itself. They were in fact doing so to make room for the arrival of newer spirits. Over time, I learned to tap into a sort of spiritual energy that was present in the realm. Using this energy, I could play with the placement of new coming souls, directing them to wherever I chose. That told me that these mindless ghouls had no power here, and weren't actually lost in this form of purgatory. As I looked into the eroded minds of the souls I manipulated, there was something else I took notice of. I could see their inner workings in a way that brought enlightenment of the human mind, a piece of knowledge that I would cherish forever. It wasn't long after that I realized that through their memories and their emotions, I was in fact able to look over into the mortal world. I had a visible view of my old home world and kept up to date with the current events. It was one of the few forms of entertainment I had, so I never really needed a reason beyond that. My final self-lesson came as a pure accident. While aimlessly directing a group of incoming souls, I accidentally sent one of them elsewhere, to a great beyond that my eyes could not see. Assuming that I had sent a soul to heaven, a whole new outlook on what life could become dawned on me. The spirits had brought me here for a reason. After nearly 30 years in the darkness, I had a purpose once more. I immediately took it upon myself to look into the minds of all new souls and direct those who truly deserved it to paradise. I could do nothing for the souls already here, including myself. Once you were here, you were stuck, unable to leave as far as I knew. I also couldn't send any soul to a darker place, like hell, because I couldn't feel its existence. So while I could not punish or harm the souls of evil men and women, I could reward salvation to those who had earned it. What bothered me was how often my father's soul would wander near me, unaware of my presence. I've always wanted to rip his head off, but as a permanent resident, his soul was untouchable beyond my manipulation. So I always send him off, hoping he won't be back as soon as the last time. After 56 years, I finally felt the coming of an irregularity. Despite my lack of knowledge, I immediately knew from the feeling in my gut. This particular arriving soul was going to be just like me, in the sense that they hadn't died to come here. I had dropped what I was doing and studied what was coming. He was an older man, covered with more rage than I had even seen from my father. The moment he materialized in the realm, he had already had a body, and that's what initially scared me. He was average height, bald, and had pale white skin. "Who are you?" I asked him almost immediately. "I don't really remember," the man wearing army shades said to me. "But you can call me General." "Okay, General." I addressed him politely. "My name is Daniel Edwards. May I ask how it is that you are here but not dead?" "I could ask you the same thing, old man." The general snorted, mocking my long, silver beard. I forgot that I had been letting the appearance of my body age naturally, as if I were still in the living realm. "Tell me!" I flared at him, white energy surrounding my entire body. "A mad witch, Ivana Graves, sent me here as part of some dumb curse," he replied, yet not intimidated by my power. My white eyes narrowed as I asked, "Why?" The general shrugged. "I guess I scorned her or something. Who knows these days? All I know is that I'm not staying here. You look like you got some answers to this place. How do I get out, Pops?" "You don't," I snarled at him, hovering back a few feet. "Once you're here, you're stuck, forever trapped in this dark void." "Bull," the general growled, glaring at me. "That witch told me that my soul wouldn't pass on from the mortal realm until I chose so. She claimed I was cursed to walk the earth forever. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get that life of delicious mayhem started." "No," I told him, shaking my head. "If your intentions are wicked, then I must ensure you find no way of leaving, cursed or not." "You will not stop me!" he bellowed, flying towards me. I raised my hands to defend myself, but instead he flew past me, towards a herd of wandering, moaning souls. "What are you doing?" I roared, racing after him. The general ignored me until I was near him. He retaliated with a stiff kick to my jaw, forcing me backwards as he gained distance on me. As the general reached the cluster of souls, he stopped, admiring their cold stillness. I also stopped just a few yards behind him, waiting to see what he was going to do. No point making this any worse over nothing. As he reached out his hand to the nearest spirit of a woman, her moan sounded off with 100 other moans just like it. "Yes," he murmured sleepily to the soul. "I know." "Did you know her?" I asked him curiously, hoping that the conflict was over. "Heavens, no," the general replied quietly. "I'm listening to what they have to say." "You can talk to them?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I said I listened to them. That's very different from speaking," he shot back sourly. "They yearn for more from this meaningless existence." "Well, they don't have a choice," I stiffly told him. "The choices they made in life are what led them here." "And why are you here, old man?" His question came almost as a whisper to my ears. I couldn't give him an honest expression. "Ah," the general cooed. "Then you are like me and many others like us, wrongfully trapped in a dump of a realm." "I don't know about that." I shrugged, but the general wouldn't hear it. "Have you ever listened to what these suffering souls have to say?" He asked me, and I shook my head. "No," I answered suspiciously. "They've never even taken any notice of me before." "That's because you don't listen," he informed me. "Some of them tell me that there is indeed a way out of here." His statement came down upon me as if he had uttered thunder. My eyes narrowed once more. "You're kidding, right?" "Not at all," he replied in a stern tone. "All I have to do is devour a few hundred of them, and their combined essence will give me power beyond mortal measure. I'll be able to leave at my whim." My eyes widened at his words, and I shook my head. "You can't do that." "Hell yes I can," the general shouted, opening his mouth. Dozens of souls were suddenly sucked into his body, and his figure began to pulse with energy. "No!" I screamed, trying to approach him. The moment I moved an inch, a tight wave of dark energy shot me back, frying my skin with first-degree burns. I did several backflips, moving backwards until I caught myself, staring in awe at the monstrous sight before me. "You can't do this!" I called out to him, worried that he might upset some natural balance. "Stop!" It wasn't long before the entire herd of souls were absorbed into his body, sealing the fate of several hundred. The man in army shades immediately raised his newfound power, startling me further. Was this the end of my life here? "I can feel the insanity of hundreds," the general murmured, studying his hands. "Their power fills me with imaginations I couldn't conceive of before now." His eyes turned a savage shade as he looked into mine. "I could conquer the world." "I told you it's impossible," I urged. "You cannot leave this place." "Yes, I can!" the general exploded, reaching out into the empty space before him. He made tearing motions for a minute until he actually tore a hole into the realm. He dug his fingers within and ripped it open until it was several feet wide. I could do nothing but remain where I was, my mouth gaping at what was unfolding. "Do you see?" he howled. "I can go wherever I want, free from the mortal restrictions of the weak. Earth, here I come." Before I could say or do anything, the general quickly hopped through the hole that he had created, which vanished immediately behind him. My first instinct was to follow him, but I wasn't sure if I could the same. It took several seconds of building the courage to try before I actually made the attempt. I did the same as he had, reaching out to tear the fabric of the realm itself. I soon found that my established powers allowed me to feel the strings of matter. I'd never thought to try something like this before. The excitement of it all felt almost overwhelming. I quickly began to tug and rip at these strings, and in a matter of moments I had developed a portal myself. But was I really sure I felt comfortable enough to go back home? Was it even home anymore? The last time I had been there, after all, was a dreadful night that I wanted nothing more than to forget. Then I shook my head, trying to rid myself of any self-doubt. "Wait," I murmured to myself. "I don't have to go back there as some old geezer. I can be any age I want." Wasting no time, I used my abilities to change my image, giving myself the body and look of a 30-year-old. When I was done, I addressed the portal. "Here we go," I said, taking a few deep breaths before I jumped through. The transition between realms was instantaneous, as if I had just crossed a line drawn with chalk. The only thing was when I crossed over to Earth, I was 10 feet above the ground, leaving me to crash into a cluster of plastic trash barrels. I was completely naked. The clothes I had imagined in the other realm had faded away. Good thing there was a startled bum only a few feet away, and what I realized was an alleyway between two tall buildings and a plaza. There was an Irish pub sign down the way, but no sign of the general. "Give me your clothes," I growled at the homeless man, who simply nodded in fear and dumped his clothes except for his undergarments. Then he ran as fast as he could to escape me, a man who had just dropped into the trash through a portal. That's when I had made a horrible realization. Now that I was back on Earth for the first time in over half a century, I was in a fragile human body, the worst part being that my powers were gone as well.